All right, today we are diving into a huge idea, a whole new way of thinking about our relationship with the planet. We're talking about a new alliance between the natural world and our own well-being, especially now with our climate changing so fast. Let's get right into it. You know, for the longest time, the story we've been told goes something like this. On one side, you have us, humanity, our progress, our needs. And on the other side, you have nature and the push to conserve it. The whole idea was that you can't have both. It's a trade-off, right? A classic win-lose situation.
Well, it turns out that whole story is just broken. It's what's called a false dichotomy. And in the age of climate change, that way of thinking is not just wrong, it's actually dangerous. Why? Because that entire people versus planet idea, it's built on a myth. And here's the core truth we really need to get our heads around. Our societies, our cities, our economies, everything we build, and the natural world are not two separate things operating on their own. No, they are deeply, deeply connected. You could even say they're coupled. Their fates totally tied together.
Because we're so connected, that creates this profound reality, a shared vulnerability. When climate change threatens an ecosystem, it isn't just a problem for the trees or the animals living there. It becomes a direct threat to us, too. A threat to one really is a threat to all.
And this can kick off a really dangerous feedback loop. Just look at this cycle. You start with a degraded ecosystem, say a cleared forest. That means it offers way less protection from things like floods or landslides. So, of course, the people living there become more vulnerable. In desperation, they might have to do things that damage the ecosystem even more, and that, in turn, makes them even less safe. It just spirals, getting worse and worse.
So what are we actually losing here? Well, it all comes down to this idea of ecosystem services. I mean, this is all the critical stuff that nature just does for us, completely for free. We're talking clean water to drink, flood control, pollination for our crops, a stable climate. Healthy ecosystems are basically the invisible infrastructure that keeps our world running.
Okay, so if the problem is this broken relationship with nature, then the solution has to be about fixing it, right? And that brings us to this incredibly powerful idea, a new approach that uses nature's own strengths to help us. It's called ecosystem-based adaptation, or you'll see it called EBA for short.
So what is EBA exactly? At its heart, it's about using the power of biodiversity and all those ecosystem services we just talked about as a core part of our strategy to help people deal with climate change. This isn't some side project for conservationists. It's central to the whole plan.
And this is the part that's so important to understand. The focus here is absolutely key. This isn't just about protecting nature for nature's sake. The ultimate goal of EBA, the whole point, is helping people adapt. It's a totally human-centric approach.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? We're not trying to build bigger walls to keep nature out. Instead, we're tapping into the incredible inherent ability of a healthy ecosystem to act as a buffer, a protective shield, absorbing the worst shocks and impacts of climate change for us.
Okay, enough with the theory. What does this actually look like in the real world? Let's run through a few quick examples, and we'll start where the land meets the sea, our coastlines.
Just think about it for a second. Healthy mangrove forests and vibrant coral reefs, they're nature's seawalls. They literally break up the energy of waves before they can hit the shore, soaking up the power of a storm surge. And here's the kicker. Protecting and restoring them is often way cheaper and more effective in the long run than building a giant concrete barrier.
All right, let's move inland now and talk about maybe our most precious resource of all, fresh water.
So, healthy ecosystems like forests and wetlands, they pretty much act like giant sponges. When you get a huge downpour, they absorb all that extra rainfall, which seriously reduces the risk of flooding downstream. Then, during the dry seasons, they slowly release that water, refilling our groundwater supplies and keeping rivers flowing. They're our natural water security system.
Next up, let's talk about something that affects every single one of us, every single day: food.
So, you have strategies like agroforestry, which is basically just a smart way of integrating trees and shrubs into farmland. Those trees help protect crops from wild weather and keep the soil healthy and full of moisture. At the same time, if we sustainably manage our oceans and forests, we're ensuring that those critical food sources are going to be there for a long, long time.
And finally, let's bring this idea right into our own backyards, into our cities. How can nature possibly help make a concrete jungle more resilient?
Well, it's all about smart green infrastructure. We're talking about things you've probably seen: city parks, green roofs on buildings, preserving urban wetlands. These things do so much. They literally cool our cities down, fighting that dangerous heat island effect. They soak up stormwater, preventing floods, and they clean the air we breathe. It's all about weaving nature back into the fabric of our cities.
Okay, so the idea is powerful, right? It just makes sense. But how do we actually get this done? How do we move this from a cool principle to actual practice in our city planning and our national policies?
Well, one of the key tools planners use is something called a vulnerability assessment. It's basically a 3-step process to figure out where we need to focus our efforts. First, you look at exposure. How much is a community in the direct path of climate impacts? Second, sensitivity. How badly could it be hurt? And third, adaptive capacity. How well can that community bounce back on its own? This helps target action where it'll do the most good.
But, of course, this isn't easy. There are some huge hurdles to get over. You've got governments that work in silos. The Agriculture Department doesn't talk to the Environment Department. There are gaps in our knowledge and a huge need for practical, local advice. But maybe the biggest challenge of all is just the way we think.
And that mindset, this quote just hits the nail on the head. We keep falling back on this old fixed belief that we have to choose between helping people and helping wildlife, especially when things get tough. It's that same old broken story we started with.
And that brings us to the final, unavoidable conclusion. The bottom line is this: investing in the health and resilience of our planet's ecosystems isn't a cost, it's not a luxury, it is a direct investment in our own resilience, in the resilience of human society.
So in the end, it was never really people versus planet. That was the wrong way to look at it all along. The real question, the one we all have to answer now, is how can we work with nature as a powerful ally to build a safe and resilient future for every single one of us? That is the real challenge and the incredible opportunity that lies ahead.